moved into the new place in late September. I was in 6th grade, old enough to carry boxes, but not old enough to be left alone without noticing it. The house was one of those split levels with a finished basement. Carpeted, wood paneling, the kind of space you're supposed to turn into a rec room, but never really do. Most of our stuff was still in cardboard, stacked in the basement's long, narrow room. The air down there always felt a little heavier, like it hadn't decided if it belonged to us yet. My parents had to run out for groceries. Just a quick trip, they said. I stayed behind, acting like it was no big deal. I waited until I heard the front door close before I went through the house, double-checking locks and flipping off the basement lights. I didn't want to admit it, but the idea of being alone in that house, with all the rooms half unpacked and echoing, made my jaw clench up tight. I ended up in my bedroom, door closed, trying to ignore the way the floor creaked under its own weight. I tried to distract myself, opened a comic, scrolled through a couple old texts on my phone. The house made its usual settling noises, but every so often I'd catch myself holding my breath, just listening. The radiator in the hallway made this ticking sound, steady, mechanical, almost like a clock. I remember thinking if I just kept my eyes on the page, the rest of the house would stay where it was supposed to. It must have been 20, maybe 30 minutes. I'd started to relax when the sound hit. Sharp, metallic, like a stack of pipes falling over, but heavier. It came from below me, somewhere in the basement. My body just locked up. I didn't move for a full minute, counting the ticks from the radiator, waiting for something else to break the air. I called my parents. My hands were shaking, which made the phone feel slippery, like it could drop right through my fingers. I told them about the noise, tried to keep my voice steady, but I could hear it warbling. They said it was probably just a box falling over, nothing to worry about. But I could hear my dad in the background, telling my mom to turn the car around. They were already coming back. I stayed on the line with them, walking through the house, every board flexing under my feet. When I got to the basement door, I hesitated. The handle was cold, colder than the air around it. I told myself it was just nerves, just the way metal holds onto the chill. I opened the door and the stairwell looked the same as always. Yellowed light, the bottom step worn smooth. I flipped the switch and the long room blinked into view. The first thing I saw, boxes, a couple of them, toppled over near the window well. I told my parents, and I could hear the relief in their voices, like they'd already moved on to the next thing. I said I'd pick them up later, tried to make my own voice sound normal. My left hand was pressed so hard against the doorframe that my palm ached. I shut off the lights and went back upstairs, closing the basement door behind me. My parents got home maybe 10 minutes later. My dad said we should go down together and clean up, just to get it over with. I remember the way his keys jingled in his pocket as we walked down the stairs. The basement light flickered once when we turned it on. He was already talking about how we'd need to get rid of some of these boxes soon. We opened the door to the long room. The boxes, every single one, were stacked. Not just upright, but lined up in the same neat rows we'd left them in that morning. I felt my skin go cold, like the air itself had thickened. My dad stopped talking. He looked at me, then at the window well in the corner. I kept trying to find a reason, any reason, but my brain just kept looping back to the way the boxes had looked when I'd left them. I can still see the exact crease in the cardboard where one had folded in on itself. My dad went straight to the window well. He pushed on the lock, tested it, then shook his head. The latch didn't catch. He wedged a piece of wood into the frame, the kind you'd use to prop open a door. I watched his hands. He kept checking the edges, like he was expecting something to push back from the other side. My teeth were set so tight, I could hear my own pulse in my ears. He checked the rest of the house. The locks, the doors, even the closets. I followed him, not really sure what I was looking for. The house felt smaller, compressed. Every door frame looked a little too square, every shadow a little too sharp. I kept glancing back at the basement door, listening for anything that didn't belong. We never figured out how those boxes got restacked. The wood still wedged in the window well. I check it every time I walk past that door.
We moved in at the end of August. Not the start of the school year, not quite the end of summer, just that in-between stretch where the air's heavy and the boxes haven't all been broken down yet. I remember thinking the backyard was too open. The fence was chain link, nothing solid, and the sidewalk ran close enough that if someone wanted to, they could watch you from the street without even trying. I told myself it was just a new place, new layout, nothing to worry about. The bus stop was at the end of the block, just past the willow tree that always dropped leaves onto the sidewalk. I started noticing this guy on my walks to and from the stop. Maybe late 20s, early 30s, always in a gray windbreaker, headphones in, walking like he was late for something, but never actually in a hurry. At first, I thought it was just the neighborhood. People here walk more than where we used to live. But he always seemed to be around when I left for school, and again when I came back. My dad talked to him once. Just a nod and a hello, something about the trash pickup schedule. Dad said he seemed normal. I think that stuck with me longer than it should have. I kept telling myself, if my dad didn't think anything was weird, then there was nothing weird. But the guy always looked up when I walked by. Not a smile, not a frown, just tracking me, like I was a car passing through an intersection. One afternoon, I was in the backyard with our dog, scrolling my phone, half watching him sniff around the fence line. The sun was low enough to throw long shadows across the grass. I heard gravel crunching on the sidewalk. I looked up, and there he was, windbreaker zipped to his chin, just standing there. He waved. I waved back, reflex, I guess. He didn't move on. He just stood, watching me, like he was waiting for something else. Our dog started pulling toward the fence, whining. I clamped the leash tighter, trying to act like I wasn't bothered. The guy finally moved on, but he kept looking back over his shoulder. I told myself he was just being neighborly, maybe bored, but my jaw was locked so tight I could feel it in my temples. That was the first time I noticed it, how my body was reacting before my brain could catch up. It kept happening. Not every day, but enough that it started to feel like a pattern. If I left for school late, he was there, walking in the opposite direction. If I got back early, he was just rounding the corner. I tried to tell myself it was just timing. I even started keeping track, what days, what times, what he wore. The pattern didn't make sense, unless he was watching me too. One afternoon, walking home, I caught my toe on a raised slab of sidewalk and went down hard. My palms hit the concrete first, grit pressed into my skin. Before I could even get my bearings, I heard sneakers slapping the pavement. It was him, running full speed toward me. He grabbed my arm, tight, too tight. His voice was right in my ear, asking if I was all right. I didn't answer. I just pulled away and stood up, my knees buzzing. He asked how old I was. Not in a casual way. He leaned in, eyes flicking from my backpack to my face. I told him I was 14. My tongue felt thick, like I was chewing on cotton. He said, "Oh, okay. Take care." But he didn't leave. He just stood there, watching, until I started walking again. I could feel his eyes on my back all the way to the corner. After that, every time I left the house, I scanned the sidewalk. Sometimes he was there, sometimes not. But even when he wasn't, I felt like the air was denser, like the space between the fence and the street had shrunk. I started hesitating before taking out the trash at night. I kept the blinds angled, even in the afternoon. My body kept bracing for something I couldn't name. Our routines started overlapping in ways that didn't make sense. If I changed my schedule, he changed his. If I left the house at a different time, he was already outside, walking past. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. I even started writing it down. Dates, times, what he wore. I still have the notebook. The entries don't line up in any way that makes sense, except that he was always there. One night, I waited until almost midnight to take out the trash. I thought if I did it late enough, no one would be around. The air was thick, heavy with crickets and the hum of a street lamp. When I opened the back door, I could see movement at the edge of the yard, just a shadow, not enough to make out a face. I froze, trash bag swinging against my leg. I stepped back inside and locked the door. The trash sat by the door until morning. The next morning, there was a smudge on the outside of the glass, like someone had pressed their forehead against it. My stomach felt hollow, like I'd missed a step going downstairs. I checked the lock 3 times before leaving for school. I don't remember the walk to the bus stop that day. I remember the sound of my shoes on the sidewalk, the way the willow leaves stuck to the bottom of my backpack. I kept checking over my shoulder. I don't think I looked up the whole way. I still haven't told my parents. The notebook is in my desk drawer, pages bent, pen marks bleeding through. Every time I walk past the sliding door, I check for new smudges. There haven't been any. But I keep checking.